Hey, this is Terrence Lachey, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to this podcast, The Growth Exchange. This podcast was designed to curate conversation, dialogue, and monologue around all things growth. I believe that everything living has the potential to grow into its fullest and most maximal potential. So let's grow. Hey, welcome to another edition of the Growth Exchange. I'm Dr. Terrence Lachey, elated to have this guest with me. We have an opportunity to kick back and talk and share all things growth. Remember, this episode or this podcast and all of its episodes is pretty much a curation of conversation, dialogue, monologue around growth, all things growth. You know, it's my philosophy and the philosophy here at the Growth Exchange that anything living has the potential to grow. And that's what we're going to talk about. So I've got none other than Ashanti Bryant from Detroit and Grand Rapids and Battle Creek and the world, all over the world. He's from everywhere, but he's got some origins. He's definitely got some I would say pylons in so many different places for growth and bridges. So thank you for being here today, Mr. Bryant. I appreciate you.
Wow. So, Dr. Terrence Lachey, I'm gonna keep affirming.
You keep reminding me of this
journey that
Thank
you went on and the accomplishment, sweet to the soul, right?
7 years a slave, man.
7 years a slave. Okay, that's a book. That's another series.
Yeah.
But Dr. Terrence Lachey, I really appreciate you, just the opportunity to share space with you, the honor to be invited here to be on your podcast and to be able to share and just connect with you in this way. So
yeah, I remember talking to you about doing this years ago. It's been a couple years where you said, hey, I'd like to turn this. You even mentioned, this sounds like a good podcast. We were in dialogue or conversation during the research process, and of which I consider you a research associate. More to follow even on that. But we also have had some other encounters based on your professional work in the education arena. You know, my background, of course, is administration, education, and all things community. And you have a distinguished identity in that field as a philanthropist, somebody who navigates resources, all for the betterment of others. Let's start with that, and then we'll just escalate into the laughter and all the jovial, escalated things that come with hanging out with Ashanti Bryant. Just your name alone, man, is reputable. Ashanti Bryant. You sound like somebody important.
Well, my father, it was that time in the 60s, 70s where African-American men who had served in the military, sort of that Black Power movement so. And there were men naming their children African names.
African kings.
And correct. That's correct. And so I was I was birthed in that time frame.
Well, it fits you. You got the demeanor for it. You have the stature and even the reputation. And I'm not just being funny. I'm sure your wife will agree, or she can disagree. She can just,
She would agree. She would affirm.
And your kids, and then all of the people that you've served for many years in the Grand Rapids area alone, you've been noted for your work in helping to bridge gaps in education, from planting schools, Christian-based childhood development centered schools, to other philanthropy work. Talk a little bit about that journey. Growth.
So I currently serve as a senior program officer at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a global foundation that invests in really the work in communities to ensure that all children have an opportunity to thrive, families are working and or building wealth, and that there's equity or equitable access to all of the important things that we need in our lives in terms of living in a community and in the country. And
education happens to be one of those things.
Education happens to be one of those, but I work with a phenomenal group of women leaders who support me on a small team here in Grand Rapids. But then we also, obviously, the Kellogg company originated in Battle Creek, Michigan. There's a team that works on the very same work in Battle Creek, and then a team in our largest city, our hometown, Detroit, Michigan. And so I'm honored to be able to lead and serve alongside this team that intentionally invest in relationships and trusting and listening to the voice of the community around the solutions that people and families need for their own children and their own in their own lives, and then stewarding the privilege to be able to steward investments, to be able to leverage additional investment coming in, but also make impact in the lives of those
I
children and
like the
families.
language that you're speaking because most people hear Kellogg, they think cereal, Tony the Tiger,
Yeah,
Kellogg's cereal. But
right.
when you hear Kellogg Foundation,
Yeah.
you begin to think about the philanthropy and the imprint that both money and human capital actually makes.
Yeah.
You've been a part of that, even with other nonprofits that you've
Exactly.
worked with as a steward. I like that word too.
Yeah, yeah.
But the word that sticks out to me most is the word thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Thrive would probably be a derivative or maybe even one of the synonyms to growth. Because this whole podcast and conversation is about growth. Talk to us a little bit about what it takes to thrive. And it could be from your Kellogg perspective or even from our city streets of Detroit growing up, on the east side. You're my second guest from, from Detroit. And it's just coincidental that we still connect.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a flavor and culture that comes with that.
Yeah.
When it comes to thriving, it's really about access to all of the things that we need as human beings to be able to thrive. My background is predominantly in education. The origin, the history, the root of the word educate really means to draw out.
Yeah.
Right? And so unfortunately, we have strong public education across our country, but we also know that too many millions upon millions of children are not realizing and we're not seeing their full potential in education because of a number of different factors, right? Root cause issues that are happening in their families and in their communities.
I mean, are you talking about things like poverty, things
Correct.
like lack of resources, lack of access, inequities?
Exactly. You can attend a school, but if your family doesn't have a home to live in, and a home doesn't mean a house,
Absolutely.
but a stable
I just
housing.
heard a recent message series on that.
Yeah. Dot. To be continued. We'll come back to that too.
Yeah.
But families not having access to quality, affordable housing, their parents or their caregivers in their lives not having maybe access to employment, business opportunities, being able to build wealth and sustain their families.
So it's not just a matter of resources. In some cases, it's the source.
Exactly.
Not having a source of. I grew up in abstract poverty in Detroit, went to Detroit public schools, made it to school most of the time. I had lots of absences because of those issues that you're talking about. Even experienced homelessness. They call it being unhoused now.
Yeah.
And we just call it out on the streets when I was experiencing it. But it was all part of the journey for me and growth. And I think back often about it. When I mention it, people go, "Oh, wow, it was just so sad. I'm sorry." It was probably one of the most growth-oriented periods of my life.
Wow.
Walking cold streets, waiting for the bus, or trying to beat the bus because I didn't have the 25 cents to pay bus fare to get to my McDonald's job. So I know what those things are like. And there's survival, but there's also thriving.
Yeah.
Hone in on the thriving piece, because if that's part of your philosophical statement with what you do as a philanthropist, what does thriving look like?
Yeah, other words that I would use to dig into and describe and define thriving would be flourishing, healthy development, right?
All still derivatives of growth.
Realizing one's potential, and because we do share faith, right? Realizing the God-given potential within every individual. So that is what we mean, what I mean, and what my life's work has been in thriving. Dr. King said in one of his speeches, right? I mean, I read a lot of the works of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but he talked about one's life blueprint. And so for me in my life, when I'm hopeful that when folks examine my life blueprint, they see that this path and this opportunity and privilege that I have to be in the seat that I'm in currently, but also, as you said, the work that I've done in community development financial institutions and
Major philanthropic nonprofit.
Right.
Billionaires.
Working with some of the wealthiest families or so in our community, working in educational system, the public educational system, the charter schools.
You've
Faith
even planted some charter schools.
That's correct. Opened brand new charter schools all throughout the Midwest, and then in private schools,
Yeah.
right, which is a whole
That's
other
another
world,
story. Yeah,
which
that's
is a
another
whole
conversation.
other world of education or so. But I mean, to my point, I think, in my life's work, I would hope that the blueprint points towards my leadership and my life's work being a lever to ensure that upon thousands of children have more opportunity, more open doors to be able to thrive, flourish, develop healthy,
Yeah,
etc.
I like how you brought those words right back
Yeah.
around because it still spells growth. Let's go to your early childhood
Yeah.
experiences. Even we could start somewhere even in the middle because most people don't go back to the infancy.
Mm-hmm.
What was a cold winter night in 1963? No, you remember your
Yeah.
first point of remembrance. What was your first opportunity of growth?
I think my first opportunity of growth really took place because I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, African American family, middle class. But then when my parents really split because of domestic violence and a number of different issues that were emerging in our family, I had to, as the oldest male sibling in my family, sort of step up into a level of leadership with my siblings, et cetera, in terms of their care.
Well,
And that was like 8, 9 years of age. So I'm an intelligent little black boy, right? I mean, I was doing well in school.
like a Poindexter type.
Yeah, Point Dexter,
I just had envisioned
Little
it.
Bill. I
Yeah.
mean, like, whatever there's all kinds of characters. But yes, I was of that profile. But I had to step up in terms of leadership. And what I mean by leadership is like serving.
Yeah.
Right, like serving and supporting my siblings and my younger siblings and my cousins.
It was always cousins involved.
And
Yeah.
my mother knew, I think my mother perceived too that I was a child with leadership. In the African American community and culture, they sometimes will say, that little boy has an old soul,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right, which means that, in
Wisdom
essence,
beyond your years.
Exactly. Your maturity, your wisdom is beyond your age or so. And so I was one of those children, and my mother gave me a lot of responsibility. I mean, I was grocery shopping for the family at 9 years of age.
Here's the test. Did you ever have to catch the bus to go down on Michigan Avenue to pay the phone bill at Michigan Bell?
Okay, see, that's something that... Okay, see, we can go back and forth.
You had to catch the bus to go pay the phone bill.
Right. I mean, so all of those things. But I think that was one of my growth opportunities. I think another growth opportunity was I had a younger brother who was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes. And so he had to take his insulin on a regular basis. And his body and his health would respond when he missed a shot. And
So you had to take on responsibility of caregiver in addition to, this bright kid who could be delegated other duties.
Caregiver, but also even just 1 year older than my younger brother,
Wow.
being aware of signs of things. Like if his blood sugar is going low and he's starting to behave a certain way, how do you respond? What do you do? Right? And so that level, I mean, I would imagine listeners or so would imagine, children shouldn't have to take on those
But
responsibilities.
it helped to make you who you are.
That's correct. It helped to cultivate in me, in those early years in my formation, a sensitivity to health issues, a sensitivity to the dynamics of families. Even to this day, my wife will tell you, my friends will tell you, whenever I encounter single mothers get me every time.
Your heart goes out, right?
Because I understand the culture, the challenges, the heaviness, the lift, the weight of what it is to be a single parent, juggling the responsibility of multiple children, their care, their learning, their nurture, right? The hard spots. All of
I
those
see a common
things.
thread here. We're going to take a break in just a minute for some sponsorship identity here. But I hear a common thread that your life experience didn't necessarily work against you. It has worked for you in your professional career.
Yeah.
Right after the break, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing right now. 8 years old was when you had that consciousness of
sure.
being in a growth opportunity moment. But we'll be right back. I've got Ashanti Bryant here on the Growth Exchange. We'll be right back.
Thanks.
This episode has been brought to you by the Growth Center, Inc., celebrating more than 20 years of making a difference. The Growth Center's mission is to impact the community and the world through meaningful partnerships, which offer resources, life skills training, and other programs that strengthen individuals, families, and communities. The Growth Center is committed to developing a Christ-centered program that helps individuals grow in every area of their lives. It makes global impact, youth development, personal empowerment, financial fitness, and scholarship promotion. The Growth Center, Inc. at www.thegrowthcenterinc.org. Hey, welcome back. At the top of the episode, we were talking a little bit about your earliest remembrance for growth opportunity. And notice how I framed it as a growth opportunity. Some people say tragedy. Some people say, weightiness. Some people could even look at it from a negative perspective. But the common thread that I picked up in the words that you chose to describe your experience is that these were all moments of growth in preparation for who you are today as a philanthropist. So the lack of resources has now given you the ability to navigate resources.
For sure.
The major responsibility has given you the capacity to handle even more major responsibility.
Yeah.
Let's draw that connection, because if 9 years old was when you started.
42 years ago.
Yeah, you said it, I didn't. I was gonna say you hitting 50.
I'm in therapy.
About turning 50.
It's gonna take a minute.
Man, wait till you catch up to where I am.
It's gonna take a minute. It's gonna take a minute. But we're not.
I have never known anybody to have to be in therapy because they're getting older.
Because externally you are experiencing the number and your age.
Yeah.
But internally, I feel like I'm in my late 20s, early 30s.
That's why it doesn't bother me. Because no matter how old the paper says, my driver's license keeps changing for some reason. The number keeps going up, but on the inside, I feel the vibrancy of opportunity, because you and I both know the statistics behind the black male mortality rate.
For sure.
And so we're outliving that.
Yeah.
What gives you the drive to outlive the mortality rate of the average black male?
I believe that, well, first of all, I am the number, but I don't submit to the norms, the societal norms of the number.
So you could be 50, but you're not going to act 50.
Exactly.
Right.
And my clothing, as much as I can, I'm at everything. My culture, how I talk, what I watch on television, what I ingest.
But you got the wisdom beyond those years, though.
Yeah.
And so that's the compliment. The compliment is that you're 50, you don't look 50, but you act like you're 65 or 70.
For sure. Just thinking back to that question, though, about my childhood and how it supported my cultivation and growth to be the leader who I am today. One of the things that I think is really important about the nuance, if you really zero in on my story, is that I was a child who, initially was in a middle-income African-American family in Detroit with a similar history as many other families, but then we plummeted into poverty because of domestic violence and other things happening in our lives. But I was a high-achieving poor kid.
So academically, you had the chops. Yeah.
So I was an excellent student and loved school. And
wow. See, that's not my testimony.
And you can. I mean, if I stood up here and folks could see me, I'm a 6'4" black man, right? Yeah. With no athletic ability.
Your presence fills the room, though, because there's a confidence that came, obviously, with your ability to perform academically.
Yeah, but we love to read. I love to read. Yeah. I was a little boy who we'd be reading books under the bush in the backyard. I'd be bringing books from school and stealing books from the library. You stealing books? Why are you stealing books?
There's something wrong with you, man. It is
you
something
stealing
wrong.
Books.
Yeah.
But that, it was just what we were navigating.
I have a confession.
What's
I used to steal away into the bathroom and read the dictionary. I literally read a red Webster's dictionary.
Okay, Webster's. Okay.
The red one, the thick
Okay,
red
yeah, I
one.
remember, yeah.
I went from A to Z.
Yeah.
And started all over again. So, yes, I can relate to the nerdiness of.
And what you all
of
don't
wanting
know
to
about
read.
Dr. Terrence Lachey is that he will drop vocabulary words on you constantly. I mean, and
I
just be
enjoy
like,
it, man.
what? Okay, we'll Google it, look it up, we'll figure it out.
Well, listen, my wife Googles me, okay? She'll say, where you come up with that word? I was like, I read it somewhere, and I know what it means.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
It's a gift.
I'm just really grateful, though, at this stage of life that I can reflect on really those hard, challenging points in my life and in my development, but how they shape you.
Yeah.
How they shape you and how they help to cultivate in you a perspective, a worldview, an empathy, a passion for seeing possibility. And one of the things that I also am very thankful for, in particular in this moment where people are being so divided, families are being divided, racial, ethnic groups, communities are being divided. One of the things that I appreciate about my story is that it wasn't all African American people who saw my potential.
Yeah.
Who opened up doors and
which we can celebrate our own, but when you begin to become notable outside of your basic community, then you begin to make some noise.
So good
trouble, as they would say.
Exactly. So there were white female teachers and Hispanic and Latino teachers and leaders in my schools, in our community in Detroit, as I went on to college, who would perceive my potential and then steer me or offer or open,
give you stolen books,
share
slip you some stolen books,
stolen books, but also steer me towards opportunities that would further cultivate me as a leader because they saw that potential.
You know what? I'm getting an image or a picture of gravity and a gravitational pull, somewhat of like what a magnet does when it draws other objects to it, but it's not a drawing down, it's a drawing up. It almost appears to me as if your experiences and your boldness, willingness to be bold about learning, knowledge, understanding, wanting to learn more, open doors and just kind of sucked you up into not a vacuum, but at least I would say an orbit of being able to succeed. What would you identify as being one of your greatest accomplishments or that you're most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of my children.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. You passed the test, right?
I'm most proud of my children. I have 3 children. Mackenzie, my oldest, is a sophomore in college. Bailey, my middle daughter. Those are my 2 daughters, Mackenzie and Bailey. Bailey is a freshman in high school. Wow. And Benjamin is in 3rd grade. And so we have a nice stretch of children. I didn't produce them on my own. And so there was a contributing gift of a woman who stuck with this to produce them. Right? And we have just a beautiful story of really creating a home and a family for them that is dramatically different in terms of opportunity, access, life, culture than the kind of families that we grew up in, as you understand.
And we've talked about it. This is a good segue into something that's coming down the line. You were involved in a research project and continue to be a good source of information and resource for just motivation to continue in the academia world. But we're going to do something of a symposium around faith, fathers, and freedom. And I want you to be a part of that.
Thank you.
Because your voice is resonant. It definitely echoes both audibly as well as contextually. Having had the Detroit experience, the black male experience, your physical presence, like I said before, people respect you when you walk into a room. If we could have you stand up, you'd go right out of camera shot because of how tall you are, but you're tall in the spirit. And I can appreciate that. During the research project, we talked a little bit about the challenges of fatherlessness. And we talked about how it has an impact in a multiplicity of ways. How did that void of the father being present, then not being present, how did that impact you?
So this is
pre-symposium because we're going to get into the symposium on this.
Yeah, and this opens up so much, and this could be a long conversation, but and I'm still impacted by it.
Yeah.
Right, even at this age. But I think how it impacted me the most, because I had potential as a young African American boy, and I didn't have the affirmation of my father's presence. So, not even the affirmation of his presence. So, I mean, the affirmation of his words. If he had been present, then I would have wanted the affirmation of his words.
Yeah. Or even if you saw, you were like, proud of your boy, and then you keep on moving. But his absence alone.
So his absence, I think, shaped in me cultivated in me this desire and this longing for male affirmation, attention in my life, to the point that I have, even as a young man, I was seeking it out in my relationships, even with my friends or so, right?
Yeah.
Right. And you see this, I mean, there's been a lot of research, including your dissertation and research around how fatherlessness impacts families, and in particular African American men.
Because it's a self-efficacy issue. It's how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your ability to succeed at anything. It now explains things. It's clear to me that your high achievement in academics and your ability to be full of wisdom, insight, makes up for the non-athleticism that you talked about. You know?
Yeah, and I've had to turn off in recent years ambition. Just the constant drive to have to accomplish the next thing.
Now, I was going to say, explain what it means to turn off ambition.
I know, I don't really know, but
because you haven't really turned it off yet,
because I haven't turned it off. But I'm saying I am embracing it, just like this 50-year-old thing.
Well, I was going to say you're only halfway there, so you still got a whole nother half.
But what I mean is, I think that very dangerous drive that we can have toward attaining more education, attaining the next level of income, attaining the next, attaining, and in order to sort of fill, quite frankly, an emotional, cognitive, identity void,
sense of self-worth,
that that I believe now at this stage of life won't be filled by those things.
Yeah. I think faith plays a very significant part in that as well.
Yeah.
Hence the topic of that symposium, faith, fatherlessness, and freedom.
Yeah.
When we think about our faith in a God who is a father, is the ultimate and quintessential father example, it fills the void, absolutely. But then you think of the physical tangibility of being free to grow like him or like that one. Think about our images, black male images, political, athletic, musical, artistic. I mean, we can find black male role models in every front. Most people won't talk about that. I mean, even astronauts, you know. I mean, think for a moment about how we have all of those things in our history. The longer we live, the more we see those. And even yourself, somebody can look at your life and go, "Oh, I want to be like Mr. Bryant." There are students probably who stood on the playgrounds of the schools that you were the principal of, that looked up to you, literally as well as from a goal-setting perspective. All of that being said, I think there's high time for an open dialogue and conversation about that impact.
For sure.
Because the research that came out of the project, the dissertation project, was that it is not all bad. Some of those voids were necessary in order for you to fill your own shoes.
I agree. I think too, one of the things that I still work through in therapy is, again, I want to go back to that whole drive piece. I intentionally am a homeowner. I'm intentionally probably almost like a helicopter dad for my children. The teacher emails something, I'm responding first, because I want you to know that an African American father is engaged in his children's learning, and I know my kids.
So I call that hypervigilance.
Right. I'm an African American man who has a significant body of my professional work that was in childcare and early childhood education. That's like 2% of educators are black men, and actually less than that now because of the pandemic and black people with education leaving the educational system just because of a number of just challenges.
And then
or
there's
so.
the mortality rate.
Correct.
We only live so long, as they would say.
Correct. So I think I hold myself to additional standards because I'm intentionally trying to utilize my life to go against what people perceive, the assumptions that are made about Black men, their possibilities, their role as fathers and leaders, et cetera, in our community.
Your life is a major book with lots of chapters. And just listening to you, I'm hearing that, and I don't know if it's the creativity or what. But let's start naming some of the chapters.
Sure.
Yeah, five chapters. I know,
Five chapters?
5 chapters. I know
Man,
that's five
I was gonna
healthy
need at
chapters.
least 10.
Well, these are thick chapters. These are chapters that are very full, robust, as they would say in the academic world,
Right.
or replete with examples. So, chapter number 1. What would you call it?
Shawnee.
That
That's
was
my
the
nickname. That's my nickname when I was a little boy. Now, I don't know why I put that out there.
But hey,
just
that's the beginning.
ridiculous.
That's the origin.
I'm gonna need them to
Shawnee.
engineer that out. But
You shouldn't have told me
so
that.
I think my nickname as a little boy and what that meant, and then I transitioned. I literally transitioned when I went to middle school. Not
I
transition
know
from
what you're
being a
saying.
boy,
I know
but
what you're saying.
transition from my family members calling me Shawnee, and I required people to call me Ashanti.
Which means that you developed a sense of ownership of your birth-given name.
Of my birth-given name.
So you grew up in front of them.
And I began to understand because people began to tell me more about what my name meant. And so as a middle school boy, I mean, my mustache is coming in.
Well, there's an entire nation named after you.
Exactly.
A nation
Exactly.
of people.
Exactly.
A whole culture of origin
Right.
called the Ashanti
You
people.
see kente cloth?
Yep.
Kente cloth was worn by the royalty of the
That's
Ashanti
your
Kingdom.
fabric.
Right. So I mean it's a part of African American culture, but certainly West African culture for sure.
Which is world culture.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
everything reverts back to that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Chapter 2.
I think becoming me.
Okay.
I think becoming
that.
me, because in chapter 2, which was sort of middle school through the end of high school, I really came into a confidence of who I was as a young man, right? And became more comfortable in my skin. Again, I'm this 6'4" Black man. Look at these massive hands.
Yeah.
Just a waste of no athletic ability.
So you had
my
something to
friends were
prove.
like, dude, you are massive. You need to be on the team.
Play some basketball, right?
Right? It just wasn't really there. A little bit, but
Yeah.
not really there. So I think just becoming me, really, really becoming me at that stage of my development, becoming more confident.
And being solid in who you are as a man. That's commendable.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people take years and years and years to spin out of confusion. And so it sounds like you have that. Chapter 3.
I think chapter 3 is, let's see, chapter 3 is probably where calling and vocation, I would say.
Okay.
So sort of in chapter 3
So
is
now you're alluding to something completely else.
right.
Different,
So calling and vocation. So I journeyed in education. Calling and vocation became sort of this imprint on me. You're this young Black man with a lot of potential. You could go be an engineer and make 6 figures. You could go do business.
But you wanted to do something
But I
else.
wanted to do education.
So you saw beyond wanting to be a classroom teacher to being somebody who was an influencer in education as an administrator.
Right.
And that's at an early age. Now, you will at chapter 3. You still got 2 more chapters to go.
But I'm telling you, people were saying to me, Ashanti, go down this path. You need to do this because you have a lot of potential. You will be great in this, right? But I think it was clear for me. In fact, there was an African-American male art teacher at an elementary school, and there was this article. I think it was a National Education Association journal or one of their periodicals, and it was an article about Black male teachers and the lack of Black male teachers at the elementary school level.
Yeah.
Right? So younger children, right? And it was almost like a light had shone in that article when I was reading it, and he was a tall Black man too, like me.
So you got a chance to almost see yourself in him.
Exactly.
That's amazing. And it also still buys into what we were talking about, that the absence of a biological father does not mean the absence of father figures.
Right.
So chapter 4.
I think chapter 4 is, I really wish I had thought about this in advance, because I would have blown y'all out of the water
well,
with this.
It wouldn't be as authentic, you know?
I think it's refinement.
Okay.
Refinement.
Are we in chapter 4?
This is chapter 4.
Now? I'm talking in your life.
I'm ending chapter 4.
Okay.
I'm ending chapter 4.
Yeah.
I want to linger here.
Yeah. Obviously.
Right.
Sound like you having fun.
Right. I think it's refinement, right? And refinement through significant life happenings and challenges, right?
Yeah.
Losing my parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Trials.
Growing our family. Being a married black man. Lord have mercy.
Even climbing the economic ladder. I mean, think about
climbing the economic ladder.
This house is not your first house, you know. So,
right. Climbing the economic ladder, being in predominantly white spaces, and yet being authentically myself.
Unapologetically.
And yet also loving them authentically for who they are. But them not knowing that I have the ability to love them authentically for who they are, because they assume that I am
an angry black man.
Exactly, or whatever they were making assumptions around. Yeah. So I think that refining kind of that chapter would be the last chapter. And then the last chapter.
Chapter 5. You're going to jump to chapter 5 already?
Yeah, I will jump.
Okay, go to chapter 5, man.
Chapter 5 is legacy.
Okay.
Chapter 5 is legacy. And I'm planning to be here on the planet at least 5 more decades.
Do you know that I have the similar philosophy about legacy? Legacy is not legacy when you're gone.
No. Exactly.
Legacy is legacy while you're here.
Exactly.
I'm learning to live, to love, to leave a legacy, but I want to live the legacy now. I want to live it. I want to see the legacy.
And so, Dr. Terrence, your invitation for me to be a part of this platform and this event, I see this opportunity to be on your podcast. The posts that I put out on social media, any article that I write, in thought leadership article, or sharing knowledge in my professional world, mentoring leaders without getting acknowledged. I don't need acknowledgement. But just working with or mentoring leaders, women leaders, black leaders, young leaders. Sharing my perspective and my journey with them, sharing tips or strategies or tactics on how they need to move. And then my own children, for sure, my 3, investing in them. That is what I mean by legacy.
Absolutely.
And so,
in addition to those 3, there's probably thousands of more that you've indicated something in their lives. So you've made some implication toward growth, and there were some little Shawnees that watched you get to where you are. But that's a good book, man, From Shawnee to Legacy.
Exactly.
Give me credit. I'll write the forward. I will write the forward.
You write the forward.
I could write the forward.
But Dr. Terrence, we don't have to write the forward now. We can just type it into artificial intelligence. And,
ain't nothing artificial about your intelligence, man. I'm glad you were here today. I'm glad
Thank you so much.
This was the first part of a multiple dialogue or conversation I'm going to have with you as we lead up to the symposium. There's some other research associates that were involved in the project that I want to include, and then some other people, a moderator perhaps, because I got a lot to say too. So I appreciate you. You've inspired me, and I'm grateful for your presence in the earth.
Well, I am just so grateful for you. I have literally in the last half decade of working in community development and philanthropy, having left being, directly in schools, I have just built so many powerful relationships and frankly had sort of this recognition of the brilliance of people. And folks, let me tell you, Dr. Terrence Lachey is just this secret that, humility, but one of the most brilliant minds that I've ever met. I'm a little mad. I feel some kind of way. I feel some kind of way that I have not built the relationship with you. But I've been in this city in West Michigan for like almost 20 years next year.
Listen, man, I was trying to get off the air without you reading my resume.
So if y'all want to grow, the Growth Podcast is a beautiful platform for you to tune into professionally, inspirationally, There's some economic conversations,
Man.
Fatherhood, parenting, family conversations. I'm just so honored to be invited to be a part of this platform.
Listen,
Thank you.
I'm honored to have you here. You just earned yourself a spot. You know, in my absence, I can have you to navigate the podcast easily because you epitomize my heart just in stating what it is that we're attempting to do here. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your contribution to society, to the world, and thank you for being a Black man.
I'm honored.
I appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir.
Listen, continue to grow, continue to develop, and let's make things happen. All right, let's make things happen.
For sure. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Growth Exchange. I'm Dr. Terrence Lachey. It's been a pleasure to have these conversations and dialogues with our guests. If you notice, one thing we all share in common, and that is the ability, the desire, and the potential to grow and maximize our fullest potential. So keep tuning in. Share this with somebody, like it, maybe even invite somebody. And if you'd like to be a guest, contact us with the information that's here and available for you. Let's grow.